Lord Prime Minister and Supreme Military Commander Hun Sen of the Kingdom of Cambodia will resign his post after ruling the country for 38 years. Sen is the autocratic capitalist dictator who has a very ironic record. He started out as a supporter of the Red Khmer, the Maoist rebels who fought against the Kingdom of Cambodia, which was allied to Western imperialism until the early 1970s. When right-wing nationalists overthrew the monarchy in 1970, Hun Sen fled into the jungle to join the Red Khmer, led by a man called Saloth Sar. In 1972, the Americans withdrew from South Vietnam, also abandoning military support for the capitalist dictatorships in Laos and Cambodia. This gave the guerrilla forces the chance to overthrow the weak puppet governments in these two countries. Red Khmer forces took control over Cambodia on April 17, 1975. Saloth Sar proclaimed a new agrarian socialist society named Democratic Kampuchea. In reality, Sar and his supporters were driven by Khmer supremacy. They wanted to restore the ancient Khmer Empire and all lands it once owned. Vietnamese were seen as inferior people by the Khmer supremacists. Under the name Pol Pot, Saloth Sar ordered all Cambodians to abandon the cities. He declared that Western technology and knowledge was wrong and therefore outlawed. Democratic Kampuchea was by no means democratic nor socialist. It became a brutal totalitarian society built on cruelty, abuses, and starvation, as millions were forced into the countryside to work as farmers. Not all members of the Red Khmer agreed with this Khmer supremacy. Hun Sen and his mentor Heng Sa-rin decided to flee to Vietnam. There, they organized the Kampuchean United Front for National Salvation. Meanwhile, Pol Pot was attacking and killing Vietnamese along the Cambodian-Vietnamese border. Internationally, he sided with the Chinese Maoists, who opposed the pro-Soviet Stalinist rulers of the newly reunited Vietnam. On December 21, 1978, Vietnam invaded Cambodia to end the brutal attacks on their border. The whole capitalist world sided with Pol Pot, despite the fact that his regime had murdered around 1.5 million Cambodians in less than 3 years. Heng Sam-ring was installed by the Vietnamese as the chairman of the People's Revolutionary Council of the People's Republic of Kampuchea. With the exception of the Soviet Union, their allies, and Vietnam, the new moderate Stalinist regime was not recognized. Instead, the capitalist world and Maoist China kept the flag of Democratic Kampuchea flying at the United Nations. Heng Sam-ring lost political power to Hun Sen after he became prime minister in 1985. 4 years later, both Sen and Sam-ring agreed on replacing their Marxist-Leninist facade with a capitalist monarchist ideology. By 1991, their Stalinist party was renamed into the Cambodian People's Party, and anything related to Marx and Lenin was removed. Hun Sen restored the Cambodian monarchy and removed all references to his revolutionary past to please international capitalism. One thing, however, stayed the same. Hun Sen would be the absolute ruler, with no opposition allowed. The current parliamentary monarchy in Cambodia is a facade. Like the socialist facade that existed in the 1980s, the current monarchy is built on the absolute power of Hun Sen and the Cambodian People's Party, which has not changed since they took power with Vietnamese support in 1979. The Western world, however, was happy with the acceptance of capitalism. The Vietnamese also remained positive, as the CPP regime worked closely with the state capitalist dictatorship in Hanoi. In the 1990s, Cambodia remained a very poor nation. Years of isolation and neglect kept most working-class people poor. The restoration of the monarchy did not change this. The signs of Coca-Cola and Western products returned, but capitalism has not improved the lives of the majority of workers. 30 years since the Kingdom of Cambodia replaced the State of Cambodia that existed from 1989 until 1993, and the People's Republic of Kampuchea, which existed from 1979 until 1989, 62% of the Cambodian population are still living in relative poor conditions. It is possible that most, if none, of the world leaders today know that Hun Sen once claimed to promote socialism. The current capitalist dictator has hidden his origins so good that few know his actual origins. It is, however, not uncommon for Stalinists to embrace capitalism. Boris Yeltsin also started as a Stalinist bureaucrat before embracing free market fundamentalism. Hun Sen is of that type, a Stalinist who switched sides to the capitalist camp after 1991, as did many leaders of the self-proclaimed socialist nations. Hun Sen produced 5 children, all who grew up with massive privileges, as their father was the dictator of the nation. Hun Man Net is reported to succeed his father as future capitalist dictator of Cambodia. Manet is 45 years old and a major general in the Cambodian Royal Armed Forces since 2011. He controls the whole army as its supreme commander, and on the 23rd of August 2023, Manet was made prime minister under his father. Since Hun Sen is 70 years old, Manet is thrilled to become the next leader in the Hun dynasty. Western capitalism has little interests in calling for a genuine democracy. Like in Myanmar and Thailand, the CPP dictatorship in Cambodia is loyal to world capitalism. Western people do not learn of the oppression and injustice that is daily Cambodia.
In 1979, following the overthrow of Pol Pot, I was one of the first journalists to enter this, the Auschwitz of Asia. Nothing in my career as a war reporter prepared me for what I saw here. There was still blood and tufts of hair on the floor and on the shackles in these cells, and I cannot forget the stench. At least 20,000 men, women and children were tortured and murdered here by a Gestapo called S-21, and when I arrived there were just 6 survivors.
Australian filmmaker John Pilger is the only journalist who has dedicated at least 3 documentary films on the country from an anti-imperialist point of view. His work is mainly directed against the hypocrites of the West and their support for the Pol Pot regime between 1979 and 1993. The liberal opposition to Hun Sen and the Cambodian People's Party is weak and unorganized. They lobby with Western governments and institutions, but get little to no support. The CPP regime has made sure that they control elections and all state institutions. Those who openly reject the CPP are denounced and arrested for undermining democracy. As Freedom House says on Cambodia in 2023, the political opposition has been squashed through an ongoing government campaign of harassment, arrests and convictions of opposition figures, supporters and perceived supporters. Revolutionary socialists are clear opponents of the CPP regime and their old leader. Only a socialist movement based on the working class has the potential to overthrow the Cambodian People's Party and the corrupt capitalist system they impose on the Cambodian workers. For this, we say 1. End the corruption and the oppressive nature of the state. 2. Free all political prisoners. 3. For free trade unions and political rights for workers to build organizations of their own. 4. For democratic control over the police and army. Fire all commanders who were installed based on loyalty to the Cambodian People's Party. 5. Open all government and corporate books. Let us see how much money CPP bureaucrats and their capitalist class stole from the working class. 6. Nationalization of the biggest companies who control the economy under workers' self-management. And finally 7. For a socialist Kampuchea as part of a voluntary socialist federation of Southeast Asia.